And what is your name?
James Hicks. James Hicks.
Okay. And what year were you born?
1929.
Okay. And where are you from originally?
Portsmouth all the way.
All right. And where did you grow up in Portsmouth?
On William Street, and I went to Wilson School. I was at the lower end of town.
And
You've heard of her. She was at the higher, and I'm in the lower. Now you're going to see what the poor people went through.
Aw. So, would you tell us a little bit about your experiences with the flood?
Well, I was 7 years old, flood, and we lived on William Street. You probably don't know where William Street is, but you know where the football stadium is downtown and the levee and all? That's the first street up. We could sit in our back porch, our front porch, and watch the water come over the flood wall. That's the old flood wall. The wind would blow it over. If a boat went by, it would, waves come over. And anyhow, when we got out of school, I think it was the month of January that they had the flood, and it seemed warm because they let the water in through the manholes, and we played in it when it was, coming up and all. And anyhow, our house got completely covered, went clear over top. We had a garage, and it floated down to some other neighborhood where we was just renting. And when they asked about the garage, we said keep it. We didn't have a car or anything. So anyhow, we moved in with my grandpa, and he lived on Gay Street, and it was right across from Selby's shoe factory, Hicks's Market. And we moved in with him, and we lived upstairs, and there was probably about 15 of us upstairs. And I think there might have been 3 bedrooms up there, but you more or less slept everywhere on the floor, as long as you had a blanket or so to cover over you. But we had food because we brought a lot of canned food up, Mm-hmm. But I remember the Red Cross going through and shouting, anybody want donuts? And you'd raise the window if you wanted donuts and all. And every day it would come up a step. Every day a step. And it only had one more step to go. My grandpa wouldn't leave. He was going to go down with the ship, He wouldn't leave. But we all stepped out the window into a boat. And I remember they was taking us out to the hilltop on a boat. And I remember the wires, they'd say, duck for the wires. I always thought they was electric wires. But later on, I ended up working at a telephone company for 40 years, and them was mostly telephone wires you was ducking for. But anyhow, then we went out there and they dropped us off on the overhead. And we went to my cousins who was named Staten, and they lived on Brant Street. That went down to Coles Boulevard. You probably don't know where Coles Boulevard is. You do? Okay, and it was just a 2-bedroom house, and there was many of us living in it, And then we also had to have a diphtheria shot, a series of 3 in Roosevelt School. And I took 2 of them. The last one I didn't take. I told Mom I was taking it, but I didn't. It was, it was a pretty mean shot. But other than that, I kind of liked the flood. You was out of school, and you was with all your cousins, and we'd play games every night, like Monopoly and stuff, But what was really interesting, being over the store, where we had all the food. We'd open up canned food all day long because we brought a lot of canned food up and all. And anyhow, I like I say, I sort of liked the flood. It wasn't bad to me, And we had to go. I don't know how long it lasted, 3 weeks or what. You probably know more than that than I do.
I know it took a while for the water to go back down too, so it wasn't just the initial event; it was the recovery.
And it was, when we was with our cousins on Bryant Street, that was nice too. But and you started playing at different places. At that time, there wasn't all those houses built up on the hill, and that's all woods, But that's about it. I think about that. Oh, my other thing, you was just talking about. Oh, go ahead and ask me some other questions.
Oh, sure. Well, I was going to ask about the time when you moved back to your house.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't old enough. I had an older brother. My dad and my older brother, our house was covered, so they just took a hose and would start spraying and wash it down. And another thing, she mentioned the Red Cross. They was good. we lost everything, and the Red Cross give us, it was just a 2-bedroom house with 6 kids. So, you know, we was sleep. They give us 3 iron beds, like twin beds for one room, and then my mother and dad had an iron bed, and the youngest girl slept with them, and then this other, we had 3 and 2 in a bed, and then they give us a potbelly stove, and we always had beans a cooking. We still had food from the grocery store, and you know, I don't know, we didn't own, we just paid rent there. We didn't own the store or anything. I mean, the house or anything, but no, it was different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was just mad that I couldn't go help clean the house, you know. But I was too young, I reckon, is what they said, you know.
Yeah.
But it was the Red Cross really helped out, and to this day, I love to give to the Red Cross, you know. Mm-hmm. Oh, another thing, when I got older, got married, the first house I ever bought was on Argonne Road, and I made sure it was higher than the levee. I laid on the ground and leveled it off to make sure. I didn't want to go through another flood, you know. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want my house that I bought to go through a flood, you know. And me and my wife, we bought a house on Argonne. It was right across from a Pepsi plant. But I could tell you a lot of other little things, like we got married 61 years ago, and when we was married, my parents all moved to California. 6 months after we got married, they all moved to California, and I worked at a telephone company 40 years, and we first year or two we didn't have enough money to go to California, but we saved up and went on a train first 2 times. And after that, we went to California every year for 50 years, you know. But I didn't like California. It's beautiful. It's a good place to go in the winter, but there's too much traffic, you know. You just can't, I couldn't stand it there. Because they was always sending me ads, the telephone company's hiring. My mother was. But I just didn't like California at all. Mm-hmm. And to this day, we still go out and visit California, and they come back here and visit. Now give me some more questions.
Well, you mentioned that you went out there by train, and
first 2 times we went. Mm-hmm. My wife didn't want to do it. After that, we flew. Mm-hmm. But I loved that train because we had little kids and they could run around in that train. You know? And
I always liked, on the rare occasions that I've been able to travel by train, I always liked it. And I was just going to ask, is that when in those particular years, was that a very common way to travel? Because I know now it's difficult to find a train going where you want to go.
Yeah, you can't. I know. Well, I just, the first 2 times we went by train, and they had one of that cart that you could go up and sit on top there, and that was great. And you actually got to see each state. You know, on a plane you don't see, you know they're down there, but you don't see them like you do a train. I'd still rather go by train if it was me, but we always fly now.
Mm-hmm. After the flood, you grew up, and then you mentioned you worked for the telephone company. When did you start working there?
1950. I worked there 40 years.
Oh, did you see a lot of changes from the time?
Kidding? Yeah. When I worked, my first job when I got a job there, they was changing the city downtown from where you picked it up and said number please to Rotary Dial, just the downtown part. And that's why I got a job there. But then they said, after 6 months, they said, you got to go outside. And I said, that's okay. But I didn't drive. I didn't know how to drive. This is a little comical. My wife taught me how to drive over the weekend, because if I didn't have a license, I wasn't going to get to work there anymore. And she taught me, and then when I took the test, I told that guy, I got to pass this test or I won't be working. And you used to have to back in, the hard way in between. And he'd say, turn up to the right, turn it to the left. He helped me in. And all I had to do was drive around the block then. So I did work, drive, but I drove a truck. I did put a lot of little dents on that truck through the years and all. But no, I loved the telephone company. That's why I say during the flood, them wires that you was ducking from, them were telephone wires. They're low, And I didn't know anything about the telephone company then, but I learned quick, and I liked it too. Another question?
Yes. Let's check here. Got mentioned that the things you used to do when you were a child before, and you could see the or the waters coming over the levee, and
Well, we used
the
to
flood wall.
We used to go over to the river. My parents told me never go over to the river. You know, we lived real close to the river. It was like in our front yard. We'd go over there every day and swim. I learned to swim in the river. Another thing she mentioned, when they built the new flood wall, we still lived there. And how they did that, they dredged the river, because they always want to get the river deeper now for the boats. They dredged the river and let it run out, and that dirt and stuff they used to build the levee. And we used to sit there, coal come out. A lot of coal was on the bottom of the river, you know, and it'd come out and it'd be smooth. It was clean from rolling, and we'd catch the coal and sell it, because that's back when you used coal, you know, to fire your furnace and wood, and we used to catch it and sell it. That was fun.
I'm not familiar with when did they make the new flood wall? Right after the flood, or?
No, I don't know exactly when, but it probably wasn't right after. It probably had to go through a lot of red tape to get money to build it. But you know, I think it's 77. The old flood wall was 60-some. We used to hang drop off the flood wall. It wasn't that high, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But well, they also back then they had a baseball team, Portsmouth Redbirds, which was AAA team. You know, of course they had a football stadium. You know that too.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moved to Detroit. And I know we used to, when they hit a foul ball, we'd catch the ball and throw it to another guy, and over the flood wall we went so we could keep it. But that's nothing to do with the flood.
That's okay. That's a good story.
But then, well, if you want a good story, we also we had a boat. We went over in Kentucky and got us a boat. It was sunk. We just brought it back and patched it up with tar out of the streets and brick because it leaked. And then what was a funny little thing is we'd be out, me and this other friend of mine, Fred Friends, we would be out in the boat all the time. And my brother come over with his girlfriend from high school. I won't say her name, it'd be embarrassing. But we said, come on, get in and take it. And my brother Bob said, this thing don't leak. I said, no, it leaked. And now we got out, not all halfway, probably a fourth of the way. And it was filling up, and naturally we had our bathing suits on, so we just jumped in, and no big deal. And they had to swim. They had to get out. She had her little shorts on, looked real cute and all. And boy, he got mad at me for doing that. You know, that was just a little joke we did on it. Yeah. Another crazy thing we did in the river, talking about the river.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my friend, we got on a Greyhound bus, and we didn't have much money. We just told him to take us towards the Arnton as far as he could take us. And I don't know how many miles he went, quite a few miles. And then he said, this is as far as you can go. We went down to the river. We had swimming trunks under, you know, and we got a log, a big log, and we pulled it out into the river and floated all the way back down to the football stadium. We didn't get there till dark, you know, but that was fun, what you'd call fun. That ferry about hit us. There used to be a ferry that went from Kentucky back and forth, but we didn't hit it. We couldn't guide that log. Anyhow, that's just the kind of things you did when you lived on the river, you know. We used to stay all night in the river and fish. I liked the river. I still go fishing in the river a lot,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
I know if two kids were wandering down the river, sitting perched on the log now, they'd probably get in trouble. Was there anything like that?
If it was, we didn't see it. We was out. We just he sat at one end of the log and I sat at the other. It did turn over and my pants went out. You know, I lost them. But we had a friend that lived 2 or 3 doors up, and we just went over. Everybody went to their house. They had funny books, you know, and all that to look at. Then I had one of my brothers to slip down our house and give me another pair of pants, you know. But no, we lived on the river. It was fun. But the flood was something. Of course, like I say, I was only 7, and to watch it come over and then watch it come up through I didn't know how they let the water in, but she said it a little bit different. I don't know, but it come through the manholes. That's the way they let the water in, because they scared it was going to break the darn flood wall down, I reckon. I don't know for sure. But anyhow, that's you know, and there was 6 of us kids, you know, so it was. But another thing, my dad never owned a car, and he still never owned a car. And she's talking about how they walk, and you know, she don't know what walking is. What we used to do, you know, we walked all over the place. We'd walk at the grocery store when my grandpa had a grocery store. We would walk down to the grocery store. My dad would cut us a ham, and we'd have a ham sandwich, and he'd give us 15 cents. That's a dime to get into the picture show, and a nickel to buy popcorn. That was the good old days. And you'd see about 3 or 4 movies, little serials and things, you know, Hopalong Cassidy and that kind of stuff.
What do you think is the biggest change that you've seen from the time when you were a kid to
Well, she was
now?
right. This place, she said 30,000. I was thinking it was more than that. You know, I think at one time this place might have even hit 50,000. You know, I always compare it with Cincinnati. Why didn't we grow when Cincinnati kept growing, and it was right on the river, and then it had the Miami River coming down. We got the Souder River. I think it was poor management or something. We should have grew, you know. And I don't say certain places kept it out, but I do believe there were certain businesses that kept us from growing out because they wanted, you know, they hired a lot of Kentuckians and this and the country people, and they had cheaper wages, you know, and they didn't want other companies coming in here, I think, that would pay more, you know. I think our own business kept out the people, or kept the city from growing, really. They'll blame it on the strikes, unions. I was in the longest telephone strike there ever was, 1958, 1956. They had a telephone strike that was for 10 months, and I just got top money. I've been there 6 years, and they had a strike that lasted 10 months. It was a bad strike, long, you know. The people was out, telephones. That's another thing. The radio station I wanted to mention on the flood, WPAY, that's the radio station was still going, and you could still hear the radios. You know, if you had a radio, you still had communication, you know. That was one of the ways. And I wouldn't doubt what telephones, well, they probably didn't work. I didn't know about the telephones then, but I was trying to figure out if they worked then. I know they work when you have your lightning storms and everything else goes out, your telephone still works. And you want me to tell you more stories?
Yeah.
No, I could tell you stories all day long, you know. But, I mean, not about the flood, but just stories, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, we had another flood scare about in the 40s, I think, that people moved out, and I was one of them moved out. I lived on William Street, or no, I didn't live on Williams then. Lived on Jackson Avenue, and it was the same end of town. And anyhow, you had to move out of the city, and we moved. In the meantime, my dad had a store on Souder Trail. He worked for Kroger's. Kroger's used to have little stores around, you know. They didn't have the one big store. They had about 5 little stores around. And my dad was a manager. One of them, my mom was assistant manager, the one on the Souder Trail. And we moved out with some people we knew during that. That only lasted about a week. And no water come in, and then they let you go back. But when I was trying to go home, I was in high school then, this is in 47. You couldn't hardly get home if you was a young guy. Me and my friend would walk, they'd say, hey, come here, buddy. Could you help me pick this table up that's putting up on the 2nd floor? And they'd give you a quarter, you know. But I mean, you know, they'd wear you out before you could get home because everybody wanted something to just move this chair up or something, you know. As long as they didn't say refrigerator.
Well, is there anything else you want to make sure you get to talk about? I don't want to cut you off. And
well, I probably got a lot more, but I forget right now.
Oh, okay. We're going to keep these videos at our library. Is there any sort of, for people that are going to be viewing this, is there any sort of life advice or living in this area advice you want to leave
My
for people
advice
to
was
see?
to move up on high land, you know.
That's good advice.
We bought that house there, and then we had a house built over here on Coles Ridge. I don't know if you know where that is.
I'm not familiar with
It's
that
the
one.
next street over, and you know, if it gets up to here, the flood, it's going to be a real flood if it gets up this high. Be a Noah's Ark or something, you know. Nah, I don't think there's anything. I could tell you my whole life, but I don't want to tell you that, you know.
No, sure. All
Let somebody else talk.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.